We'll hop into the stainless side of things. Stainless continues to be in a bull trend. This is a 5-year chart looking at LME nickel prices, and we got up close to as high as about $11 per pound. That was on the back of the news announcement that Elon Musk and Tesla were taking about $1.6 billion worth of nickel in an offtake agreement over the next 5 or 6 years from a Canadian mining company. That kind of spiked the price up because it was an indication that EVs are really going to be a big driver of nickel going forward. Offsetting that a little bit, you can see this, the price jolted back down a little bit, still very much so elevated as we sit here today. But the reason for the pullback a little bit was Tsingshan, which is the world's largest stainless steel producer. They did announce earlier this month that they are beginning to produce and ship nickel matte units. So nickel matte is a form of nickel that can be utilized in electric vehicle production. So kind of offsetting a little bit of that bullishness around Tesla with the idea that they believe they will be able to help with supplying that industry a little bit. But make no mistake about it, look at this chart from a technical standpoint, from a chart standpoint, it's very much so still in an uptrend and looks pretty well supported as we sit here today. And fundamentally, it makes sense. We talked about this on Engage, but inventories on the London Metal Exchange are shown here. You can see that over the last year and a half, inventories have been dwindling at a pretty rapid clip. And again, that just centers around this idea that we're getting back to normal. We're seeing a lot of demand growth, and the supply side of things just isn't quite keeping up. So it's a similar theme to what we've seen in a lot of other metals, but exchange inventories on the London Metal Exchange are coming down pretty rapidly.
Hey, Nick, could I ask a dumb question on that one? And this is always come up before, but dwindling exchange inventories add support. How does that work where, and this is, maybe just a uneducated answer on the question on this one, but like if the inventory is lower, how does that support the price? Wouldn't that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so ultimately, just to give a quick bit of background, the London Metal Exchange is really acts as a market of last resort, meaning if there are excess supplies of nickel or aluminum or copper, traders will actually put their metal in a certified LME warehouse, London Metal Exchange warehouse, and they're located all over the world. LME warehouses are not the only place where metal can reside. You can have other exchanges that have warehouses full of metal, and you can also have private warehouses that are full of metal. So for all intents and purposes, there are probably other trading companies that have private warehouses that have a bunch of nickel in them, a bunch of aluminum in them. They just aren't publicly tracked because they aren't forced to do so. But to answer your question, if aluminum inventories on the exchange are dwindling, there's at least a belief or a notion that if they're dwindling on the exchanges, it's likely an indication that those inventories are dwindling everywhere. Because again, that market is kind of a market of last resort. And if people are seeking out metal or nickel units from the exchange, it probably means that they couldn't really find it anywhere else, I guess is kind of the point. So we're pulling those inventories out of the exchanges, leaning things out there, which is just raises the risk or raises the concern that we could get into a shortage type situation where you actually run out of units.
Right. Thank you.
And I would say, speaking of traders, this is a chart showing how investment managers and traders are currently positioned. And this is looking at it over kind of a 4 to 5 year time period. If it's below zero on the chart, it's indicative of the trading community being short or bearish for metal. If it's above zero, it's indicative of them being long. And you can see that basically since March, lows of March 2020, when we were initially going into lockdown territory, ever since then, the short positioning from the investment community has very quickly gone into a bullish set of positioning. It's pretty much stayed there in bull territory or positive territory for pricing for the better part of a year and a half. So all things considered, whether we like it or not, the investment community can and does have an impact on the price of metals. And right now they're positioned pretty bullishly